Dylan is the character whose backstory we know least about, especially when it comes to his Audi's life. That said, we can still make a pretty good assessment of the character based on his actions on Lumen's severed floor. Let's take a deep dive into this character and hopefully gain greater insight into what he's about. Welcome to the Nautilus Files. If you're a regular here, you already know the drill, so to all the newcomers, be warned. This video is going to be full of spoilers that will no doubt ruin your day if you haven't watched Severance yet. By the way, why haven't you watched Severance yet? If that is the case, you can stop the video now, watch Severance, lose your natural mind, then come back and watch this video. I promise you it will all be worthwhile. Okay, spiel over, let's begin. Dylan G, or more accurately, Dylan George, is introduced to us as a severed employee who wastes no time identifying himself as the resident go-getter with a penchant for sharing his unsolicited opinions with absolutely no filter. Dylan is reward-driven, and all he seems to really care about is what he can get out of his employer. But he pursues performance goals set by Lumen that usually end with him receiving some kind of reward. And over his time at Lumen, Dylan has acquired quite a lot of them. An entire treasure trove of, well, these things. When Helly is first introduced to the crew, Dylan perceives her as a threat to his dominance as the guy. At first, he's standoffish and tries to intimidate Helly, warning her off any attempts at trying to compete with him for the top spot. Dylan makes a point of showing off his desk full of goodies as a way of showing her what she's gonna have to compete with if she tries him. Of course, to us, this seems juvenile, because it is. The funny but tragic reality of it is that companies really do things like this, and a lot of times it works. As for Dylan, being a severed office hermit gives him a uniquely narrow perspective. So to him, those finger traps and goofy caricature drawings are absolute treasures. Dylan's cat and mouse banter with Irving is a major point of comedy for the show, and the writers make generous use of the juxtaposed personality types to create funny situations between the two men. Irving, the perpetual devotee at Lumen's beck and call, makes for an interesting comparison to Dylan's "I'm just in it for the waffle party dude" approach to work. Dylan's blunt personality drives Irving bananas, and Irving is constantly chastising Dylan for not behaving the way he thinks a true Lumenite should. Dylan loves to push Irv's buttons at every opportunity, and we all get the benefit of sitting back and laughing at it. Dylan's view of work and Lumen are in stark contrast to Irving's. Dylan's respect for Lumen appears to be superficial at best, just enough to look like he's towing the line. There are moments where we witness his true feelings.
If he doesn't process today, they won't know until Tuesday of next week. It's typical Lumen bullshit.
Oh, careful, guy.
Dylan makes it plain that he doesn't trust Lumen, nor does he buy any of that pseudo-religious quackery. Dylan's perspective is more in line with Helly's when it comes to Lumen, openly displaying a contempt for the company, and they are more than willing to break the rules if there's something to gain from it. Dylan exhibits certain traits and other interesting characteristics of note. For one, he seems highly intelligent and has a strong aptitude for technical things. He knows a lot about knot tying, which is really weird. It's a weird thing to bring up. I'm looking at you, Severance writers.
What about you and Mark?
What?
You two enjoy sneaking off the other day? Baby goats?
He's also very observant. He picks up on Mark and Helly's vibe pretty early on, maybe even before they were aware of it. He also reads the Irving and Bert thing like a book, giving Irving the third degree for making what he thinks is the grave mistake of fraternizing with a member of optics and design. As I mentioned in the character breakdown of Irving B, this scene is important because it's the first time we see Dylan showing genuine concern for a team member, proving that despite outward appearances, Dylan does feel connection and concern for his fellow refiners. I think we can say that Dylan likes himself a lot. This scene where he tries to imagine what his Audi's life is like is pure gold. Dylan apparently fancies himself a jet-setting baller that makes bank flexing muscle for a living. He stresses his confidence and boasts of his physical prowess, stating, for example, that he has the strength of 2 men, and of course, those deltoids. There are 2 major Dylan-centered events that take place in Severance that we simply must discuss. One is, of course, the MDE biting incident, and the other is that time Dylan did his best hero impression and made it possible for Irv, Mark, and Helly to escape Lumen to get help, albeit temporarily. After Dylan learns that Lumen can not only wake up innies on the outside, which is a major revelation, he also learns that he has a son. This piece of information changes Dylan forever, beginning his transformation into a proper protagonist and setting him on the path towards his personal conflict. Now Dylan has a mission, a goal that we the audience can get behind. The day following the OTC incident, Milchick tells Dylan that he cannot learn any more about his son and that he's expected to accept the fact that he will never even know his name, much less ever meet meet him as an innie. Up until this moment, Dylan was driven purely by selfish desire for material gain and but the absurdity of his situation and he finds himself in proves too much. Milchick and all of his amazing dance moves are not enough to subdue the rage. Dylan snaps, directing all of his pent frustrations onto Milchick, surprising everyone present. One thing I did like about this scene was the fact that all of the members of MDR came to his side even though they had no idea what was going on. This is another example of that feeling of solidarity beginning to grow between them. This further galvanizes the group and pushes them towards their plans to escape Lumen. On the night of the escape, we see a very different Dylan. Well, different in his purpose, now that he's turned his strength into a tool meant to enact an exact purpose greater than himself. Dylan wants nothing more than to see his son and to know who he is. He also knows that MDR's best chance at succeeding and getting help from the outside involves him staying behind to hold down the fort. His skill set and head for the technical make him the best candidate to run the OTC and keep Milchick at bay long enough for the rest of the crew to accomplish some good on the outside. This is a pretty big sacrifice for Dylan to make. Having a chance to see his son, even if it was only for a few minutes, would have been a more precious gift than any of the rewards stashed away at his desk. And the old Dylan might have acted selfishly and taken the chance on the outside without consideration for anyone else. When he reveals what was in the box given to him by Milchick, that glass etching of the MDR department, we see just how much Dylan sees the outcome for his teammates as important as it is for himself. Dylan does what is best not only for himself but for everyone in MDR. This simple act is very telling and cements Dylan as a true protagonist, in my opinion. Okay, so this wouldn't be the Nautilus Files if we didn't dabble in some speculation for a bit, so let's get into it. Dylan has a whole family on the outside. I know, this might be a foregone conclusion, but this is technically still a theory because we only ever see the one child. There are some signs of a female occupant in the house based on the women's